Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
This is Jim Mora, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, in the middle of one of the most memorable and quite frankly memeable moments in NFL history. We may all look back at this with humor now, but in the moment, there was nothing funny about the way Mora was feeling. The Colts were in the middle of a season-ending slide under Mora, a veteran head coach at the time with decades of experience who was coaching for his job. Combine all of that with one reporter whose pretty standard question lit a fire under the head coach, and you get a recipe for one of the most epic meltdowns in pro football history. But how exactly did we get here? Who is Jim Mora, and what really caused him to go off in the way that he did? In this video, we're going to take a look back at everything leading up to this moment and learn how all of this happened. I'm Omer for Real Take Sports. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe. This is the Real Take Meltdown. Born in Glendale, California in 1935, Jim Mora's journey to the NFL began with humble roots. During college, Mora excelled both on and off the field as a tight end for his college football team, where he forged lasting friendships with notable figures like Jack Kemp, who would later go on to make his mark in both politics and pro football. After earning his degree in 1957, Mora's passion for the game led him to the realm of coaching. He returned to his alma mater as assistant coach before assuming the rank of head coach in 1964. Mora's coaching journey then took him to esteemed institutions like Stanford, UCLA, and Washington, where he honed his craft under the guidance of his respected mentors. In 1978, Mora made the leap to the NFL, joining the Seattle Seahawks as their defensive line coach. His talent and dedication quickly caught the attention of the league, but it was in the USFL where Mora truly made his mark. As the head coach of the Philadelphia Stars, he led the team to unparalleled success, capturing 2 USFL championships and earning Coach of the Year honors. 6 months after his USFL triumphs, Mora seized the opportunity to lead a team in the NFL, taking the helm as head coach of the New Orleans Saints. And while his escapades with the New Orleans Saints are definitely a story for another day,
The second half, we sucked. We couldn't stop the run. Every time they got the ball, they went down and got points. We got our ass totally kicked in the second half. That's what it boiled down to. It was a horse performance in the second half. Horse. I'm totally embarrassed and totally ashamed.
Mora had established himself up until this point as a remarkable head coach and a formidable force as a mind for football. But after the Saints decided to go in a different direction, Mora then waited his next head coaching job. And while that was all happening, the Indianapolis Colts were looking for their next head coach. In 1997, the Indianapolis Colts finished at a dismal 3-13 record, the worst in the league that year, with rankings that reflected their fledgling state at the time. This led to the firing of head coach Lindy Infante and a cleaning out of the front office, which at this point was a welcome sign for Colts fans who were demanding the team make changes, and it was for good reason. The Colts at this point sucked. To put this into context, since the move to Indianapolis in 1984, the Colts only made the playoffs 3 times, and outside of one great season from Jim Harbaugh in 1996, they really failed to find a reliable option at quarterback. However, their luck was soon about to change with a 1998 QB class that boasted 2 seemingly can't-miss prospects at the top with Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf. And we all know how this turned out.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
But at the time, it wasn't the no-brainer that it clearly seems to be now in hindsight. As newly hired Colts general manager Bill Polian put it in a 2023 piece he wrote looking back at the 98 draft, quote, "When I arrived in Indianapolis at the conclusion of the 97 season, I got all the scouts together and said, okay, everybody vote, Manning or Leaf. It was 50-50, right down the middle. I think it kind of mirrored, in a sense, the media point of view." According to Polian, in the end, the decision came down to a poignant question by Colts owner Jim Irsay about which signal caller had the bigger upside. And as Polian wrote, quote, "I said, well, the upside of Peyton is that if we're right about him, he's got what it takes to lead us to the promised land. The downside is, if we're wrong, the worst that can happen is we have another Bernie Kosar. And with all due respect, Bernie had a great career." And needless to say, Peyton Manning turned out a lot better than Bernie Kosar. No hate, Bernie, you definitely had a wonderful career. But it was decided. With the first pick in the 1998 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts selected Tennessee quarterback Peyton Manning. So the Colts at this point had their GM and had the quarterback. And as you may have guessed it, the final piece they needed to start this new era was a head coach. However, the Colts had to make sure they found the right guy for the job. And as I said before, fans in Indianapolis were becoming incensed at the team's continued failures. And there's only so much a fan base can take before they just throw in the towel. In their search for their next head coach, the two names reportedly at the top of the list were Michigan Spartans head coach Nick Saban and the aforementioned Jim Mora, who was taking time away from football to reassess his future in the sport. According to Polian, he originally planned to offer Saban the job, which could have really changed the course of pro football history. But in the end, Saban wanted full control over personnel decisions, and that was something that Polian, who planned to be very hands-on as GM, could not promise. So, Polian instead settled on the 62-year-old Jim Mora as the Colts' sixth head coach since the franchise had moved to Indianapolis, and we started a new era. While the Colts had the tools they needed to turn things around, it wasn't exactly easy sledding off the bat. The team struggled mightily in 1998, once again finishing with a league-worst 13 losses, with rookie quarterback Peyton Manning leading the league in interceptions with 28. But after selecting future Hall of Fame running back Adrian James in the following year's draft, things were looking up for the Colts, who had improved drastically as they saw Peyton improve his game from the previous year and develop a now legendary connection with fellow Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison. Behind this trio and under Mora's leadership, the 1999 Colts finished with the second best record in the league that year at 13-3, boasting the best turnaround in NFL history at that point, and even earning a first-round bye in the playoffs. Oh, wait, sorry, playoffs? In the postseason that year, they did end up losing to the eventual AFC champion Tennessee Titans, and followed it up next year with another trip to the playoffs in 2000. While they were once again one and done in the postseason that year, things did seem to have improved for the franchise. Under Mora, they had become one of the better teams and developed a true franchise signal caller in Manning, who was developing into one of the most respected players and leaders in the entire NFL. And as you may have expected, they were looking to build on this success in 2001 with another trip to the playoffs. And they did. Right? No, really, right? The Colts began the 2001 season on the road against the New York Jets and would pick up right where they left off last year, crushing them 45-24. They would follow this up with another impressive blowout victory over the Buffalo Bills, and at this point, the Colts stood at 2-0 and looked to reinforce the narrative that they were in fact one of the NFL's best teams. However, the narrative would soon shift as they played the New England Patriots, and a young sixth-round quarterback making his first start in the NFL by the name of Tom Brady. Yeah, that Tom Brady. Brady had replaced an injured Drew Bledsoe the previous week and assumed the duties of starting quarterback. And while we all know how that story ends, at this point, Brady wasn't exactly the unquestioned GOAT that we all know him to be today. And you could argue that the Patriots at this point were the polar opposite of the Colts. Whereas the Colts looked to be impressive and dominant in their first two games, the Patriots struggled to begin the season and were going into this game at 0-2, with their last loss coming to the New York Jets, where New England only scored 3 points. And remember, this is the same Jets team that the Colts lit up in week 1. So on paper, this was a no-brainer. The Colts would easily defeat the Patriots and their new quarterback, but that's not what happened. The Colts seemed different in this game, with receivers shying away from contact and Patriots defenders having a field day with big hits and turnovers. In the second quarter, with New England having the lead, Manning looked poised to finally get the Colts on the scoreboard, but his next pass was intercepted by Otis Smith for a touchdown. By the time the third quarter rolled around, the Patriots were up 23-0, and they never looked back. Another 23-yard interception returned by Ty Law capped off a 21-point quarter for Brady and the Patriots, who easily breezed past the Colts 44-13. This wasn't only the first matchup in the now historic Manning-Brady rivalry that would go on to define an entire generation of football, but it also served as a bit of a turning point for the Colts' season. See, the Colts were riding hot after their first 2 wins, but this game, the turnovers, and the fact that it was against a relatively unknown rookie really made an impact. And things would only get worse from here as the Colts would go on to lose their next 2 games, which included a 1-score loss to the Raiders and another 38-17 thumping at the hands of their division rival, you guessed it, New England Patriots. At 2-3, the Colts needed to get back to their winning ways, and they did with impressive wins on the road against the Chiefs and the Bills, which brought them back above 500 and looked to save their season. But yeah, that's not what happened. There's a reason we're making this video, guys. That's definitely not what happened. The Colts would go on to lose their next 2 games to the Dolphins and the Saints, and going into their Week 11 matchup with the San Francisco 49ers, the Colts had a record of 4-5. Certainly not the worst, but definitely not where they wanted to be. Remember, this was a team that had Super Bowl aspirations and the talent to back up those claims. Things went as bad as they possibly could in this game for the Colts. Needing a victory to turn their season around, instead, they turned the ball over 5 times. Manning threw 4 interceptions, 2 apiece to Ahmad Plummer and Zach Bronson, one of which was a pick 6. San Francisco was able to capitalize off of the Colts' mistakes and score 23 points off of 5 Indianapolis turnovers, and despite outgaining the 49ers that day, the Colts would go on to lose that game 40-21. And after the game, Jim Mora sharply criticized his offense's efforts, especially Manning and his 4 picks. And right after that, Mora was asked by a local Channel 6 reporter by the name of Tim Bragg, "Hey, you're probably going to have to win out to make the playoffs." And in that moment, it's almost as if the stress of the expectations which were weighing down on Mora and the entire franchise came out in what is now remembered to be one of the greatest meltdowns in NFL history.
I don't know. All I know is we threw 4 interceptions and fumbled once. 1 interception they returned for a touchdown. 3 others were in our end of the field where they scored points. That's all I know. That's inexcusable. Inexcusable. Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
The Colts did not make the playoffs that season. They would go on to finish at 6-10 and fire Mora, who never coached again in the NFL. They would then go on to replace him with Tony Dungy, who would lead the franchise to its sole Super Bowl championship since the move to Indianapolis. And all of that may not have been possible without this once-in-a-generation rant. What are your thoughts on Jim Mora's now historic rant? Does it make sense now looking back at all the context? Also, let me know what your favorite post-game rant is in the comment section. And if you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Until next time, I'm Omer for Real Take Sports. Be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.